John, MIT Senior Fellow, Managing Director here at Link Ventures, where you guys are very focused on generative AI. And there's probably 9 other titles I could have used right there. Probably one of the best community builders I've ever been around. There's no one that I've ever met that I'm thinking, oh, John Werner probably knows that person. So it's really fun to have this conversation. I'd first like to start and chat about an area that I think you're quite passionate about, which is building the ecosystem here in Massachusetts around generative AI and how this community competes on the national and international stage to win. You've done a lot of work both at the foundation model layer and at the application layer with AI, and so would love to talk about your efforts there.
Yeah, so community builder. Yeah, I'm proud of valuing community and trying to build it. There are 8 billion people on the planet. The most popular first name in the world is Moham. A lot of people you may know don't even know a Moham. Says that we're in different social economic circles. I think what's happening with AI right now is so exciting, and it's going to be disruptive, but it creates all sorts of opportunity, and building community around it to quickly disseminate new ideas and have them combine like Lego in new ways is really powerful, Yeah, so this is a very exciting time, and we're in this space right here where 100 years ago there was a canal that was built from the Charles River right to here, 0.7 miles, because the product that was being built here, was being created here, was invented here, was so important. And it was the Industrial Revolution, and 9% of the rubber in the United States was actually built in this factory. And the canal was here to be able to move fire hoses and galoshes and bike tires to the rest of the world. Today, AI is, the AI revolution and what it means. We're just early days, and building community helps thought leaders to come together and figure out what to do with this. If you look at Web 2, which is where Amazon and Facebook and Google did really well, Uber didn't come in until 16 years in.
Yeah.
And it took a few people meeting, say, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And Web 2 seems so simple. And AI, there's so many different things. But in terms of community building, I collect interesting people. I love bringing them together. I love bringing famous, fancy people who are very accomplished with people that are on the way up and are going to be those people. Or maybe they'll never ever be those people, but if they don't meet those people, they can't even realize they could be those people.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of luck involved also. I think a lot of really wealthy people talk about the sperm lottery, I'm rich because of the sperm lottery. But I think with AI, people can do things with AI that, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 1,000 years ago, you never could have that competitive advantage. And now it's the imagination. So I'm, yeah. And I think as AI changes how our society works, community there's gonna be a premium on community.
Yeah.
And so some of the things I've been building and getting track record in is it's fun, but I also think it's gonna be really important as we navigate through these exciting times. I'm definitely a techno optimist.
Yeah.
People could talk about the apocalypse and doom and gloom and how, software is gonna eat our society. What did Andreessen say?
Well, software is eating the world, AI is eating software.
Yeah. People, we could spend all day,
Yeah.
getting down on that. But I say, how does technology kind of allow us to do things we couldn't even imagine? I'm a little more creative than not creative, and I just think for creatives, there's so much you can do.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, this is probably the biggest opportunity in our lifetime to massively grow the economic pie. Yep. The amount of value in the world is by definition not fixed. And so I think as folks are afraid,
100 trillion economy, AI immediately is adding 10 trillion.
Yep.
So now it's 110 trillion.
Insane.
The denominator is changing.
Yep. And that's like dramatically more value to uplift people around the world. And I think folks are sort of worried about, what if X, Y, or Z happens, without realizing the opportunity cost of not aggressively pursuing this and growing the amount of wealth for the world. So you are also one of the better historians that I know. You are deep on studying the trends of the past and thinking about what that means for now. So how would you compare this moment we're in, generative AI, to the previous technology revolutions? I've heard more significant than the steam engine. I think the LLM is the new transistor, right? There's all of these sort of thoughts around how we map this. Now, none of them work perfectly, but what's your mental model here?
Yeah, no, so a few thoughts on that. So I write a column for Forbes and do it daily. I think this month I've written the most columns this month in November of all the 6,000 contributors. I've done 24. So I'm just passionate about documenting this moment. And I think drawing upon the past as a way to foreshadow what's possible for the future, where things are going, is important. The United States in 2026 is going to celebrate the sesquicentennial. I don't know if I said that right.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. In 1976, we celebrated the bicentennial. It's easier one, rounder, a number that's just 2 zeros. I don't hear a lot of people talking about the 250.
Yeah.
I mean, partly, world is complicated and people aren't looking that far into the future. I also think it's an opportunity to look at the past, but then say, what's possible for the future, and think 50, 100, 200, 250 years into the future. I'm a big Star Trek fan. I taught a course, Star Trek Contemporary Epic, in college, and James T. Kirk with the communicator, that was 250 years in the future. If you read, the science fiction when that is happening, and you look at how much, we've already accomplished that they talk about as science fiction, and there are other things that we haven't accomplished, and I do wonder if we imagine these things and use generative AI to imagine things, if that's going to accelerate the pace. In terms of AI, you mentioned large language models. I'm also wondering what's after large language models, right? Because large language models are going to take us down a path in terms of energy consumption, and there's some flaws there that make it a challenge. And I think we need innovators to think differently. When you think of the train, it wasn't that people evolved the train into the plane. It was people thinking differently about transportation, getting from point A to point B. And the bicycle, I know Steve Jobs wanted to call the Macintosh the bicycle for a while.
Bicycle
it didn't
mind,
end up working, but the human, in terms of getting from one point to another, is in the bottom third of all species, of all animals on the planet, in terms of energy expended. But the condor is the most efficient. If you put a human on a bicycle, they're twice as efficient as the condor. And I see AI as being these things that are going to allow us to do things in at a scale and speed and have impact like never before. In terms of history, I live in a town that Minsky used to live in. He's since passed away. I know his wife, Gloria. But Marvin, I used to talk to him, said, why did you call AI? Because he did. And he said, that's an interesting question, John. I guess before he coined the word AI, they were talking about cybernetics. There were some other concepts being discussed. But Minsky and McCarthy were both at MIT. They wrote a paper. They submitted something to the government saying, hey, give us some funding. We want to get some people up at Dartmouth this summer to kind of brainstorm where things are going. And it was for that paper that was submitted that the term AI was coined, artificial intelligence. And I said, Marvin, why did you come up with AI? And he said, well, I could have called it anything. I could have called it BI, but I thought AI sounded a little bit scary enough that it would get someone's attention from the government. And I have a sweater that I wear. It says 1954, and I wear that because the term AI wasn't coined until 1955. So like before Christ, after Christ, it's before AI, after AI. So AI's been around for a while, and there was an AI winter in the 90s. I think people had anticipated all these things were going to immediately happen, but you didn't have the large language models. You didn't have the compute. You didn't have the clock speed. You needed a bunch of things to converge to allow the moment that we're seeing now happen. I think there were some people that thought intellectually it was going to happen earlier. I also think all those things that didn't converge back then, there are going to be a number of those things that we don't even anticipate, like dark matter in space, that are going to allow for acceleration or us to go in directions that were like, oh wow, that's pretty awesome. So I think being facile on history, being able to understand a bunch of different trends is important to be an innovator and leader at this point. I'm also very excited about 10 to the negative ninth nanotechnology. And I think nanotechnology could be benefited from AI, can scale because of AI. And I think nano could have as big an impact as AI, but it's not mainstream because you can't see it and people aren't talking about it. But there are a lot of interesting things. I also think sustainability on the planet, we need to figure out some things at scale. And I'm not convinced our universities and our government and our corporations are aligned appropriately to do things at the scale that we need to do things. But it creates opportunities, and opportunities for people who create tools and companies that get traction. I think the next Google are going to be two people who are going to be meeting over like, hey, how should we do this with AI technology? And maybe they'll buy Google, and because they get so much success, they have an option.
Yeah, and I think the gaps we have in government and university are often filled by the private markets. And you have a lot of views on the trends and where this is all going. But what I appreciate about venture capitalists is they have to express those views in capital. So it's the true expression of what you believe to be true today. And you, as a managing director here at Link, exercise that thought process often. So here today, this month, this year, what are you really excited about to be backing?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing like 1,500 deals a year. I've been doing this for a number of years. I think each year gets more and more exciting, and I think all this AI stuff is tremendous. And a lot of talented teams we're seeing. Not sure if the product or the idea is ready for prime time, but I could see the enthusiasm, and they're going to make it with something. They may pivot, they may start from scratch, do something else. Been very involved with Liquid AI. I think you're familiar with that. Uses less compute. It's a white box solution as opposed to a black box solution. Can go on-prem. I was in a meeting with someone very senior from a Fortune 50 company, and we were talking about on-prem. At the end of the conversation, said, and also cell phones, and they didn't realize that I meant cell phones when I said on-premises. But I think AI on mobile devices, where you don't have to be attached to the cloud. Your phone can be on airplane mode, or a robot. And I think robots are going to take a lot of different shapes and forms in the next few years. People know the Roomba, people know, self-driving car, autonomy, but there's going to be a lot of creativity in robots that are going to be in our society. And I think physical AI is something I'm kind of intrigued about. Right now, AI, you interact with something like Sora, you type in, I want this movie scene, and it's rendered on a screen. But physical AI, you don't even have to have the screen. It's interacting with what's around us. I don't think society's gotten the memo that that's coming, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities for that. So I think things haven't totally shaken out as to what are some of the foundational tools to be using at this moment. And companies like yours, Blitzy, are going to come up with some best practices and help create the new normal. So in terms of, I think you said, hey, John, what are you excited about? I'm excited about everything. and I just think the best is ahead of us. I do think that there are going to be a bunch of people who have been innovators and leaders that are just going to throw their hands up and just say, I'm overwhelmed. I don't understand which way is up. Almost like you're scuba diving and you're doing somersaults, and that's okay. Sit back and enjoy what's going on around you. I think there's going to be another type of leader that's going to say, you know what, I don't know which way is up, but I know that I can be a bridge from what used to be, whether it's rotary phones or desktop computers that weren't on the internet, to whatever was, just recently, to what's going to be. And they're leaders that are going to bridge. And then they're going to be leaders that are going to say, I'm going to figure out the future. I'm going to change the vector of society by creating some companies that create that new normal, that get traction, and that are the inspiration for what's possible. But I think we're in a very dynamic time. You mentioned, the steam engine, the there's a lot of inventions of the past that have had a big impact, but I don't think we've ever had an experience quite like this. And I think of a tree with roots that grow in a certain way to deal with certain weather patterns. And I think AI is going to hit us in a way, as a weather pattern we just haven't been prepared for. And so some trees, metaphorically, are going to fall over, but we're also going to grow new roots, and we're going to create new opportunities. And as I said a moment ago, I think for creatives, I think a lot, like there's some companies that may have 500,000 employees today. They may go down to 50,000 employees, literally, in a short amount of time. But those 50,000 employees, I think, can be much more impactful than the 500 of the company prior. And I also think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity to do things that have never been done before. I assume you're going to edit some of this because
you're in a lot of these, like, call it Fortune 50 to Fortune 500 rooms. As one of the most well-networked person I've ever met. People have high trust in you. As these leaders are trying to navigate this moment, I imagine there's a level of confiding in, what do I do, right? They know it's important, but beyond that, like, how do they adopt? How fast do they adopt? Like, what's the advice you give, when it's just you and one of these larger executives when they try to navigate this?
Yeah, no, I do know a lot of Fortune 50. I write for Forbes. I wonder if I should say Forbes, 400 or whatever. A few years ago, I would hear top leaders talk about politics and how government was the United States was like a competitive disadvantage, and it's not working. I'm not hearing people talk about government anymore. And I think there was a period where major companies would hire someone for the moment, and then if they couldn't handle the new moment, they'd just switch and get a new leader. I think now you need to hire leaders that can adapt and be ready to get up to speed. And I don't know a leader of the kind that you're describing that doesn't have some flexibility to be able to create models that adjust to how things are. But I think the center of gravity is changing in all sorts of places, and there's a lot of uncertainty. But with uncertainty creates kind of leadership that can lead at that time. And I think the United States is a great country, and there are different ways to lead now. And if you look at Google and Microsoft, they were created during a down economy when there was some uncertainty. I mean, there were other factors there that allowed them to thrive. I think Amazon and Tesla, they were given a lot of second chance, third chance life by the way they were set up. So you don't have to, my generation, I think a lot of people wanted to go work at Goldman Sachs, and a few years later, a lot of people wanted to work at hedge funds. I think more recently, people were like, oh, I got to do my startup. And for some startups, it's like a vanity play just to say they did it, and they really don't know how to make it successful. But I think startups is going to play a disproportional role in leading what the future looks like. And for a lot of these top Fortune multinational companies, I think they're going to take notice of them in a way maybe they didn't do so much before. And I think that's a good thing. But that also puts the onus on the next generation, millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, whatever those are, to take advantage of that, because they weren't in the room in the past, and you had to wait your time, and you had to suck it up. And now they are in the room, but they need to be able to know what to do in the moment.
I think we're going to enter a period of extreme M&A. We've been entering a period of almost no M&A. How do you see that playing out over the next several years here?
I know a lot of lawyers that there are times when they have a lot of business, times when they don't have a lot of business, and that's what you're referring to. I guess I don't think of it so much like that. I more think of it of the people that I respect, of the people that are curious, of the people that are building things, of the people that are making things happen, making action happen. What do they need? So, are they getting into merging and acquisitions or are they trying to find the right talent, or are they trying to keep up to speed on what are the technical opportunities, technology breakthroughs? And I like bringing those people together so they can meet one another and push each other. I'm doing something at MIT where I want to get the best and brightest from the MIT community, but I also want to get the best and brightest from other universities, other R1 universities, and almost create this dynamic where people are learning from one another. And I think smartphones are amazing. We're more hyperly connected than ever before, but it also creates disconnection.
Yeah.
We're in echo chambers. And I mentioned Moham is the most popular first name. I'm excited at this time to connect people. So there may be more mergers and acquisitions, but we need to connect people and create networks where innovation pops up and bad ideas pop up. And then if a bad idea pops up, we spread it through the network and say, don't go that way, or we learn from it. So let other people deal with the mergers and acquisitions. That's not my expertise, but I love merging talented people and innovative people with one another.
Totally. I think one of the things I admire that you do so well is you actually are able to get these Fortune 50 execs with the cutting edge startups. And I think there's this view, if you live in startup land, that because these organizations are big and sometimes slow to move, that the leaders are that way as well, when actually these are some of the smartest people in the world.
Yeah, you don't get there unless you have a certain skill set.
That's exactly right.
But I also think those leaders could be reverse mentored. And I think some of these startups don't realize how much of a role they can play in managing up. And so we are entering a time where the power dynamic, I think, is switching. And do we have the right people to be able to take advantage of that? And that's what I like to inspire people, that everything's possible, and help Fortune 50 CEOs, have an open mind. A good friend of mine, I think, is probably one of the top CEOs in Asia. And there's another one, household name that you would know, emailed me the other day. And these people, want to hear from startups, and they are keeping up to speed, and they do depend on people around them to help them keep up to speed. But a generation ago, it would have been very different. And if there was a CEO that wasn't right for the moment, they would just switch them out. And now you need to be facile. But I think for entrepreneurs that are doing startups, it's very exciting, and you need to be ready for everything. Years ago, someone said, in your drawer, have a few different plans for anyone you meet, and don't type it up. Don't waste that. Have it on an email, but just be ready. Because opportunities around every corner. Yeah,
absolutely. I think you've done a good job of having a plan, because it seems like you meet everybody, and we've definitely appreciated having you as a part of the ecosystem here at Link. Any closing advice for entrepreneurs?
Like I said, there are 8 million people. I don't know everyone, but I do celebrate people. I do like people, and I like connecting people, and I like making shit happen. Action.
Yeah.
Some of my hacks, I take a lot of photos.
Yeah.
I don't sell any of my photos. I put them all online. I have well over 1 million photos online, and I get maybe 12 million visitors to my site. But my site doesn't show views, so you can't see that. So I'm not craving attention, but I like giving photos away. I like documenting moments. I like, at the beginning of every new year, looking back at the work I photographed the year before and curating some of it and sharing that. So I think photography, documenting is a way that we can live in the moment. I think, not too long from now, we're going to have TiVo for life, where you can just call up anything, kind of like the Truman Show, and have a video and a screen, and we won't need to be doing it, and AI can do it. But I think there's something special about that. And the sharing is a way to build a human connection. I also call people a lot. And when I'm on a phone call, I often call someone into the call that is not scheduled to be in the call, didn't know that I was bringing them into another call. And I find it very efficient, to move some things forward by bringing people together. And I don't know how to call that. I sometimes use like guerrilla calling, guerrilla marketing. I don't know, but I like doing that. That's a hack.
The 3-way cold call.
Yeah.
That's incredible. No, I love that.
Yeah, I do that all the time. And I do it enough that people are like, damn, that's never happened to me before. But there's no reason, we all have phones that could do that. There's no reason, you got to be creative and thinking, who would be orthogonal to this conversation, who would add a dimension and it says something about yourself. If you can bring in someone with that expertise, it shows how much you respect the person you're talking to and what you bring to the table. It also could have the reverse impact that someone's like, I thought I had 100% time with you, and now I got to share it, and there's an art to it. I also am not transactional with the people I meet. I don't say, hey, I'm going to introduce you to them. Give me a cut if something happens of it. And I think that's, I think we all want to get ahead and make money and live a good life. But I think there's a time and place not to be transactional and just try to help people. And the class I teach at MIT, I bring that. I'm a visiting lecturer at MIT, and I'm often spending time trying to bring people together. So some of the things I do this imagination action, which is about exponential technologies. What's the human dimension of it? And right now it's AI. I mean, Alex Wisner-Gross, who I know thinks we're going to be uploaded into the cloud pretty soon in our lifetime. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I do think there's going to be exponential technologies, not just AI, that are going to be pretty amazing. And for anyone just thinking AI is it, and how do I harness it? On the left and the right, there may be some other things that you could use concurrently with AI. And so be open-minded and flexible for that.
Yeah, amazing. Any closing advice for the entrepreneurs out there building?
Let me ask you, you've done a few of these interviews. What are some themes or ahas that you've had from this? What have you learned by doing these? And then I'll respond to that.
Yeah, so I've learned the importance of being directionally correct. And this is like something your colleague Dave talks about, is insofar as you are moving into the right market, solving a problem for somebody, the technology is going to change so fast that as long as you're moving in the right direction and you're solving a problem, you're going to gain great market share. And that's turned out to be incredibly true. And then the second thing is like the willingness to get your hands dirty quickly when the new technology comes out. And so that has proved to be, I think, the way to stay on the front edge of AI. Like you can't take something and put it on a Jira board and get to it in 2 weeks. Like something new comes out, like you have to basically put it to work right away, push the limits on the technology. And like that's really the only way to stay on the edge for us. So those are, I think, two big takeaways. Other than that, everybody's split about where value is going to accrue. And so I think as long as you're directionally correct, you'll build something really meaningful.
Yeah. I think, those are all very thoughtful observations. I think people need to be well grounded at this time. You're using AI to create things that you're going to eliminate the jobs of the people who created some of that. But
I don't think so. I think the amount of software is going to increase dramatically.
So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
But you're going to change the role.
Totally. Yeah.
I know an eye doctor who kind of joked with me, saying, there's only so many eye doctors because we want to control the market so we get all the business. But what AI can do, suddenly what an eye doctor is going to change. And eye doctors are going to switch, maybe go upstream and do different things, maybe do things they like more.
Yeah.
So but my point with you're changing the roles of people by, the tools, maybe you'll edit this out, is I think we as a society need to be really grounded and okay with who we are, because I think we're going to become hybrid collaborators with technology in a way that we didn't. Like we used to have to learn how to program and learn how to use the remote and program the VCR. Now computers are going to learn us, and they're going to understand things implicitly, where it used to be it was very explicit. And to a society that does that is going to be different. We're leaving a society that is very comfortable, that we understand, and we're entering a society that's going to be very different, but it's going to create opportunities. But that means individuals, I think, really have to have a sense of self. And I know I love to bike to work, and I'm a photographer, and I love connecting people. I think people need to do some soul searching. Who are they at this time that'll allow them to build these great enterprises, ventures, and figure out how they fit into the larger scheme.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think if you define yourself strictly by a hyper nuanced craft instead of taking an abstraction and say, I'm actually a builder of technology and I love building products, I think you're great. If you're like, I'm a...
Or a facilitator. Maybe you can't build shit.
Totally.
Because there's some people who's like, I'm not creative. I'm not, you know, the last chair I drew was in kindergarten. Now I just draw an image of a chair from I remember. I'm not creative, but, or I'm not an operator, or I am an operator. That those things are suddenly going to be moving so fast that it's going to be disorienting. And so knowing how you sit.
Yeah, I think removing your the labels a little bit from yourself, and if you're a C# enterprise developer, you might not be a C# enterprise software developer 2 years from now. But if you're all about building things that add value to people's lives and feeling good about that, and you love learning, I think you'll be in a good spot. What effect do you think Blitzy will have, in this trend? And we're an autonomous development platform, so we're going to rapidly create a lot more software. And I think you could speak to if there's like an analogy that you've seen in the past. Maybe I would say like when cloud happened, everyone thought, oh, like we're going to need way less software developers, but we actually just have different software developers and way more of them, and we're doing way more. That like a tool like this that rapidly accelerates the building of products will likely follow a similar trend. I think because you have such a keen view of the history of technology might be interesting.
I mean, so I think autonomy is going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
And like right now people think of autonomous vehicles like their car, but autonomy is going to be just like on everything.
Yeah.
And society doesn't realize that. And what are the first few things? Like Amazon started with books, but now it does everything.
Yeah.
And because Amazon started with books, it suddenly grew to a place that said, hey, wait a second, let's do cloud. And
talk about a pivot.
Well, but
not a pivot expansion.
It's pivot expansion.
Yeah.
And I think autonomy is going to allow us to expand in ways and change how we interact and what it means to be human. And it's going to give people meaning on successful jobs by interacting with software and interacting with hardware. I don't know. And
I'm curious to like, as you think about autonomy, right? Like, how is this going to sequence out, right? From what industries, where are we going to have, near full autonomy first, and then what's going to be the laggard here? Any views on that?
I mean, what I think is that there's some companies that are worth $2 billion right now, and if they don't figure out their AI strategy, they're going to be worth a fourth that. And then there are going to be some companies that are going to figure out how to use your tool and are going to 2x, 4x, and that this is an exciting time for startups to figure out how they can be that X factor.
Yeah.
And that in a few years, you're not going to need that X factor because the X factor suddenly got distributed.
Right.
But this is the Wild West.
Right.
I wasn't around in 1849 when the gold rush happened.
Yeah.
It's the 49ers. But this is a gold rush.
And
the fact that you're like, I got to figure this out. If you don't figure it out, someone else is going to do this.
Totally.
But if you figure it out and get it first, you have the opportunity to set the trend of what it is.
Yeah, I think if you're an early adopter of some of these autonomous tools, like that goes right to your bottom line almost immediately, and what you're able to put out from an output perspective, whether that's software or some other autonomy tool, is just dramatically different. So I think our view of it is certain systems will have unique advantages when it comes to reaching, you call it near autonomous or full autonomous, and those systems are systems that are digital first, right? Which is in contradiction to the fact that we're like on level 3 of self-driving. That's a hard problem, but I think systems that are digital first and systems that can validate and compile, which means that at inference time, you can run pretty large workloads and say, hey, agent team, like, is this correct or not? If not, why? Go through a series of chain of thought or tree of thought, depending on the specific task at hand, and then try again within the system before the human ever gets it. And so there's no manifestation into the physical world. There's an unlimited amount of tries that a system can take to solve something, and by the time it's received in the outside world, it's complete.
Yeah. Well, I also know the guy who was the first to do outsourcing in India, and
whoa,
so
he's doing all right for himself.
Yeah, he's different. And I know his son, but outsourcing was like, all right, in this time zone, something's happening. You hand it to someone else, and then it comes back.
Yeah.
what you're talking about in terms of autonomy,
Yeah.
you don't have to send it somewhere. You don't have to build a relationship with another continent. It's how you divide people's time on your team. You still may outsource, but this is a dimensional shift that wasn't possible before, and it's going to manifest itself in everything.
Yeah.
And autonomy, it's a word that's also, it's going to like Facebook co-opted the word friend.
Yeah.
Autonomy is going to change. So, and there'll be like Eskimos have a lot of words for snow. Like we're gonna have a lot of words for autonomy.
Yeah.
But it's gonna change how we interact, what we can do, what we can dream, and how we make things work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and what I also like is that what you're doing is the guy or woman who wakes up in the morning and sees some of the Copilot equivalent software that's been created, that they have wind at their back. There's momentum.
Oh yeah.
And they just dive in and kind of facilitate. You don't have to do all the programming in Cobalt and do all the punch card equivalent stuff, just to build a foundation. It's like a house of cards that could all fall apart.
Right.
You have like a nation working with you.
Yeah.
Who knows if you should tax the software and they should pay taxes or there are all sorts of other implications. But it's going to change the role of human and allow the human to focus on other things and innovate in other ways where they didn't have the luxury to do.
Totally. It's super exciting. It's like we tell, senior architects that use the product, we're like, it's like you had 3,000 developers compressed into the time of compute working for you overnight that do exactly what you set out for them to do in the morning. And when you wake up, it's done, right? It would have taken a year. And for them, that's exciting because it's like, oh, okay, like I have so much more I would do to this product. Like I have my 2030 view of where this product is going to go. And I think they're saying I don't think this company will ever get to my 2030 view because we're dealing with tech debt and we're dealing with the shifting priorities. I'm like, I'm going to be able to build the product that's been in my head this entire time.
Well, I talk to a lot of people who've sold companies for $1 billion. And I say, hey, if you made that software company today, would you need the same number of people? And everyone says, oh my God, I could do it this way. They almost salivate. Oh, I wouldn't have to hire all those people, had all those tough moments. And they realize that this time is different. Yeah. But it's easy for someone who's post-economic, who sold a company, to look back and say, oh, I could have done it differently. Yeah. But what you're creating is allowing the people in the moment now to look forward on how they can play a role. And even like the concept of waking up in the morning, we're going to think about that differently. Yeah. We're not waking up to get the coffee going and try to get momentum. Yeah. You're going to wake up, hit the ground running, and it values the human in a way that kind of got lost before because there's so much, you're weighed down by so much of the monotony. Yeah. So I think what you're doing is going to help people understand that autonomy isn't just self-driving cars, but can ripple through everything we do. And now it's up to our imagination on when to do it, how to do it, and in doing so, it frees up individuals to dream in ways that we couldn't even begin to dream about. Yeah. So kick ass. Right on. It feels good. Don't screw this up. This is important. No, I'm serious. I'm serious too. Like 100 years from now, people look back. 10 years from now. Or 2 years from now. Yeah. 10 is a new 100 years. Yeah. 10 years from now, people will look back and say, that was a milestone company that kind of said, hey, this is what's possible. It feels good though. Like, when you're working on building something and you have like a really great team of people that are like, I can like actively see them and like they're doing all the right things. Like, and you just feel a little bit better, like your anxiety settles. Like, that's how it feels when you submit a job to Blitzy and then you call it a day. Because it's like, I have an army that's like building this right now and like I can take a little bit of a breather at the end of the day and I'm going to come in and there's a lot more work done. And another thing that's kind of cool is you're a West Point grad, right? I am. So you may know this, but the civil engineer, which was a key engineer during the Industrial Revolution to kind of respond to the moment, came, I think the first engineering school was West Point. It was. And the civil engineer was the non-West Point engineer. I think there's something like a civil civilian. But to be an engineer today, you have to have a certain mindset, you have to go through a certain training, but now you could expand who's an engineer. Totally. Because the autonomy you get from some of the software, you can outsource some skills that maybe you never learned the basic building blocks to be able to pull off.
Right.
But you could collaborate with these autonomous tools to be able to imagine things that software may be able to give some examples of, but isn't able to pull off.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is giving permission for more people to collaborate and to dream and to create things even more efficiently. And I think it's a good future. It's a good day that you're doing this. So thank you.
Of course. Yeah, we're excited to be building alongside you guys here. So thanks, John.